I think I didn't do anything wrong, just showed everyone how friendly I am. But now I'm sitting here with legal papers on the kitchen table, and my husband, my ex, I guess, won't even look at me. All because of one stupid kiss at a barbecue. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible stories. I'm not sure how it all went so wrong. I didn't think I did anything bad, just tried to be friendly and make the party more fun. But now I'm sitting at the kitchen table, staring at a stack of divorce papers with my name on them, and my husband won't even look at me, all because of one stupid kiss that everyone saw. My name's Mirela Vaughn, I'm 34, and if you ask me, people love to overreact. It happened at our neighborhood BBQ last weekend. The music was loud, everyone was laughing, and I'd had a few drinks. Our neighbor Noah was joking around, and someone shouted that we'd make a cute couple. I laughed, leaned in, and kissed him. Just a quick one, a joke, really. But the way Ethan looked at me after, it was like I'd done something unforgivable. He didn't yell or cause a scene. He just set down his plate, nodded once, and walked out in front of everyone. I thought he'd cool off, maybe sulk a bit, then come back like always. Instead, he came home the next day with a calm face and said he'd talk to a lawyer. That's when I realized he was serious. The whole thing started so ordinary that I still can't believe it turned into the disaster it did. That Saturday morning, the weather was perfect, sunny, warm, not too humid. The kind of day that makes everyone in the neighborhood want to sit outside with paper plates and cheap beer. Ethan had spent the morning mowing the lawn, sweating through his shirt like he always did, while I handled the important stuff, decorations, snacks, the playlist. I wanted everything to look effortless but still impressive. That's kind of my thing. Make it seem like I'm not trying when really I am. We'd planned the barbecue for weeks. It was supposed to be a simple get-together with our neighbors, the Reeds, the Millers, and a few others from the street. Nothing fancy, just burgers, music, and laughter. But for me, it was also a chance to remind people that I still had it. You know, charm, energy, presence. I'm not old, but after 2 kids and a job that has me smiling behind a reception desk all day, I like moments when people notice me again. Ethan doesn't really get that. He's quiet, steady, the kind of man who'd rather talk about the mortgage than small talk. I love him. Well, I thought I did. But sometimes it feels like he just exists beside me, not with me. He doesn't flirt anymore, doesn't compliment me the way he used to. So, when other people notice me, I take it as proof that I'm still something, still desirable, still fun. That's how it started with Noah. Noah Reed had moved into the house next door about 6 months earlier. Divorced, early 30s, good-looking in that scruffy, casual way. He was the type of guy who made everything seem like a joke, even serious things. We'd talked a few times, mostly friendly neighbor stuff, but he always had that little spark in his eyes, like he was testing how far he could go, and I'd be lying if I said I didn't enjoy the attention. By noon, the backyard smelled like grilled meat and sunscreen. Kids were running around with popsicles, and the adults had gathered near the grill with drinks in hand. I was wearing a sundress, yellow, a bit shorter than usual. I noticed a few of the women glance at me, then at their husbands, then back at me. I told myself it was because they liked my dress, but I knew better. When Noah arrived, he came carrying a cooler and that easy grin of his. "Hope you saved me a burger, neighbor," he said. I laughed and told him he'd have to earn it. Ethan stood behind the grill, tongs in hand, expression unreadable. He's never liked Noah much, but he'd never say it outright. He's too polite for that. The afternoon rolled on with music, laughter, and those harmless little comments that make parties feel fun. Noah kept hovering near me, cracking jokes, teasing me about how I was the real host while Ethan just cooked. People laughed and I laughed too. Every time Ethan looked at me, I saw that slight frown, The one he gets when he's uncomfortable but trying not to show it. "Relax," I whispered to him when I went to refill my drink. "You look like someone stole your grill." He didn't smile. He just said, "You're getting carried away, Mirela." His tone was calm but cold. I rolled my eyes. "Oh, please. We're just joking around." He said something like, "You're not the one being laughed at," and turned back to the burgers. That annoyed me. He was acting like I'd done something wrong when all I'd been doing was making people laugh. So I did what I always do when Ethan gets quiet. I made it worse. When Noah made another joke about being my grill assistant, I laughed louder than I should have. Someone shouted, "You two look like a sitcom couple." And I felt this strange rush, like all eyes were on me, like I was performing. Noah grinned, leaned closer, and said something like, "Maybe we should give them a real show." I don't even know why, but I said, "Why not?" and leaned in. It was meant to be a playful peck, just a funny moment to make everyone laugh, but it lasted a second too long. I could feel the silence drop like a curtain behind us. The laughter stopped. I pulled back, smiling awkwardly, pretending it was still a joke. But Ethan's face, it was like something inside him just froze. He didn't yell or throw anything. He didn't say a word. He just put the tongs down, wiped his hands on a towel, and looked at me once, long enough for me to feel small. Then he walked out the side gate, through the yard, and got in his truck. The sound of the engine starting was louder than the music. For a few seconds nobody spoke. Then someone tried to laugh it off. A weak little chuckle, but it didn't help. I said something stupid like, "Guess he's not much of a party guy," and forced a smile. A few people smiled back, but most looked uncomfortable. Noah stepped back, mumbling, "I didn't mean to cause trouble," and I brushed it off, pretending everything was fine. But it wasn't. After a few minutes, people started leaving. The Reeds were the first to go, then the Millers. Even my mother, who'd been sitting near the patio chatting happily, came up and whispered, "Maybe you went too far, honey." I laughed, trying to sound confident. "It was a joke, Mom. People need to lighten up." She just gave me that worried look mothers give when they know their daughter's pretending. By the time the sun started setting, the yard was a mess. Half-empty plates, spilled drinks, melting ice. I stood there staring at the spot where Ethan had been standing earlier, grill smoke still curling into the air. I told myself he'd cool off. He always did. Ethan wasn't the kind of man who exploded, he just needed time. That's what I told myself as I cleaned up the plates and stacked the chairs, my hands shaking a little even though I kept insisting it was no big deal. Later that night, I texted him, "You seriously left over that?" No reply. I tried again. "Come home. This is ridiculous." Still nothing. By midnight, I was pacing the kitchen, half angry, half anxious. I called him, but it went straight to voicemail. I told myself he was being childish, that he'd come back once he realized how dramatic he'd been. But part of me, the part I tried to ignore, felt this creeping guilt. Not for the kiss exactly, but for how easy it had been for me to do it. I poured myself another glass of wine and sat by the window, looking out at the dark street. Noah's house was dark too, no lights on. I wondered if he felt guilty or if he was just relieved not to be the one paying the price. When I finally went to bed, the sheets felt too big, too cold. I stared at Ethan's side of the bed and told myself he'd be there in the morning. He always came back after fights. Always. But when the sun came up, the driveway was still empty. His truck was gone. His toothbrush was gone too. That's when I realized this wasn't just another argument. Something had shifted. I didn't know it yet, but that kiss, just a tiny, stupid, meaningless kiss, had already changed everything. The next morning, I woke up expecting to hear the coffee machine running, or the sound of Ethan moving around the kitchen like he always did. Instead, there was nothing. Just silence. The kind that feels heavy, like the whole house is holding its breath. I reached for my phone before I even got out of bed, Still no reply to my messages from the night before. I told myself he was probably just trying to make a point. That's what people do when they can't handle embarrassment. They hide until they can act like nothing happened. I got up, put on one of his old shirts, and went downstairs. The kitchen looked like a war zone from last night. I hadn't bothered cleaning everything, figuring we'd do it together in the morning. Now the plates and half-empty cups looked accusing, like proof of something ugly I didn't mean to cause. I sighed, started the coffee pot, and told myself I wouldn't give him the satisfaction of seeing me worried. By noon, I still hadn't heard a word. I called his phone again, this time letting it ring until it went to voicemail. "Ethan, can you please stop being dramatic?" I said, trying to sound calm. "It was just a kiss. Everyone knew it was a joke. You're making this a lot bigger than it needs to be." I paused, hoping maybe he'd pick up. He didn't. "Just call me when you're ready to talk like an adult," I added before hanging up. I told myself that would make him realize how ridiculous he was being, but deep down, I knew Ethan didn't do silent treatments for attention. When he was quiet, it meant something was really wrong. My mom called around too. "Have you talked to him yet?" she asked, her voice soft. "Not yet," I said, rinsing a plate just to have something to do. "He's sulking somewhere. He'll come home when he's done playing victim." "Mirela," she said carefully, "I was there last night. I saw his face. You humiliated him in front of everyone." I laughed, though it sounded too sharp. It wasn't humiliation. It was a joke. Everyone's too sensitive these days. "Sweetheart, you kissed another man. Even if it was a joke, people saw it. You need to talk to him before it gets worse." I hated how she said it, like she was siding with him. "Mom, please. You've been married 3 times. You don't get to lecture me about what ruins a marriage." There was a long pause before she said quietly, "Maybe that's exactly why I can." Then she hung up. By evening, I was pacing the living room, checking my phone every few minutes. The silence was starting to feel unbearable. I wanted him to walk in, to say something, anything, so I could argue and get it over with. I even practiced what I'd say, how he was overreacting, how everyone was laughing, how he needed to stop caring so much about appearances. I knew exactly how to spin it. I always did. But then, just as I was about to call him again, headlights flashed through the window. My stomach flipped. I ran to the door, ready to let him have it, but it wasn't Ethan. It was Claire, his sister. She got out of her car with that serious, composed expression she always had, the one that made people nervous even when she wasn't saying anything. "Hi, Claire," I said, forcing a smile. "If you're here to check on your brother, he's not—" "I know," she interrupted. "He's staying with me." I blinked. "Excuse me." She folded her arms. "He needed space. He asked me to come pick up a few of his things." I laughed again, but it came out shaky. "You're joking, right? He's actually making you run errands for him now." Her eyes didn't move. "He doesn't want to see you right now, Mirela." I hated the way she said my name, like she was already judging me. "You're really going to take his side without even hearing mine?" "I heard enough at the barbecue," she said flatly. "You embarrassed him, and then you doubled down." "Oh my God," I said, throwing my hands up. "It was a joke. Everyone's acting like I slept with the guy. I kissed a neighbor, for 2 seconds, in front of everyone. If Ethan can't take a little teasing, that's his problem." Claire's face didn't change. "He's not angry, you know. He's hurt, and honestly, I think he's done letting you make him feel small." Her words hit harder than I wanted them to. I crossed my arms, trying to sound confident. "He'll get over it. He always does." "Maybe not this time," she said, looking around the room like she couldn't wait to leave. "He asked me to tell you not to contact him tonight. He'll reach out when he's ready." And with that, she went upstairs to pack a bag of his clothes. I followed her, still talking, still trying to justify myself, but she didn't respond. She just gathered his things, zipped the suitcase, and said quietly, "Mirela, I hope you realize what you've done before it's too late." After she left, The house felt emptier than it ever had before. Not quiet, empty. I opened the fridge, stared at the leftovers from the party, and realized I couldn't even eat. I poured another glass of wine instead. By the next morning, the gossip had started. My coworker Jasmine texted me, "Girl, what happened at your BBQ?" I stared at the message for a long time before replying, "Nothing. People are just exaggerating." "Ethan's being dramatic." Her reply came fast. "People said you kissed the neighbor. In front of everyone." I typed, "It was a joke." She sent back a single emoji, one of those wide-eyed ones that looks half horrified, half pitying. That made my stomach twist. At work, the whispers were worse. Two of the hygienists were giggling near the break room when I walked in. They stopped the second they saw me. "Everything okay at home?" one of them asked, too casually. "Perfect," I said, forcing a smile. "My husband's just taking some time to realize how lucky he is." They laughed politely, but I could feel the judgment hanging in the air. I wanted to scream that they didn't understand, that everyone was blowing it out of proportion. But deep down, I knew this wasn't going away. That evening, I drove to Claire's house. I didn't text ahead, I just showed up. Ethan's truck was parked in her driveway. I took a deep breath and knocked. Claire opened the door, looking surprised but not pleased. "I need to talk to my husband," I said firmly. She shook her head. "He doesn't want to see you." I stepped past her before she could stop me. Ethan was sitting at the dining table, calm, collected, wearing the same expression he'd had the moment he walked out of the party. "Ethan," I started, "we need to talk." He looked up from his phone. "I don't think there's much left to say." I forced a laugh. "Come on, don't do this. It was one stupid moment. Everyone's acting like I cheated on you." He said quietly, "You did worse. You made a joke out of me." That stung more than I expected. "You're blowing this way out of proportion." He nodded once. "Maybe. But I'm done living in your version of things." I blinked, unsure what to say. "So what? You're just giving up on us?" "No," he said, standing. "I'm protecting myself." Then he turned and walked into another room, leaving me standing there with Claire watching from the doorway. I wanted to run after him, to scream, to make him see how wrong he was. Instead, I just stood there, my throat tight. When I finally spoke, my voice came out low. "You can't just walk away like this." But he already had. I drove home that night in silence, gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles hurt. I told myself he'd calm down once he realized how cold he sounded. He'd remember how much we'd built together, how many times I'd been the one to keep things going. But when I pulled into the driveway, I saw something that made my stomach drop. A space, on his side of the closet, completely empty. His shoes, his shirts, even the old jacket he never wore. Gone. That was when it hit me. Ethan wasn't just angry. He was preparing for something bigger. By Monday, it felt like the whole neighborhood knew. I could feel it when I stepped outside to take out the trash. The glances from across lawns. The polite half-smiles that didn't reach anyone's eyes. Mrs. Miller waved but immediately looked down at her phone, pretending to scroll. Even the kids on their bikes seemed quieter when they passed our driveway. I told myself it was all in my head, that people weren't really judging me, but deep down, I knew they were. The story had spread faster than I could have imagined. Apparently, someone had filmed the moment at the barbecue. Me laughing, Noah leaning in, that quick kiss, and Ethan walking out. Just a few seconds, but enough. The clip had been shared in the neighborhood group chat before the night was over. By morning, it was everywhere. Everyone had seen it. Everyone had opinions. At first, I told myself it was fine. Scandal blows over fast. I could spin it. I always knew how to turn things around. I'd just make myself look like the misunderstood wife of a jealous husband. People eat that up. When I got to work that morning, Jasmine raised an eyebrow as I walked in. "Rough weekend?" she asked, pretending to look at her computer. I smiled like it didn't bother me. "Not really. People just love drama." "Uh-huh," she said, glancing at me for half a second. Well, if you ever need to talk, I'm around. The sympathy in her voice made my stomach twist. I didn't need pity. I needed control. At lunch, I texted Ethan again. We need to talk. You can't just disappear like this. No reply. I sent another. You're making things worse by ignoring me. Everyone thinks we're getting divorced or something. Still nothing. I called my mum that evening. He's not answering me, I said. I think he's staying with Claire full-time now. He needs space, Mirela, she said softly. You humiliated him in public. I groaned. Not you, too. It wasn't that serious. I didn't mean anything by it. I know you didn't, but he's not you. He doesn't joke like that. I was trying to make people laugh, I snapped. It was a party, not a courtroom. There was a pause. You can't fix this by defending yourself, she said finally. You need to apologize. I hung up on her. I wasn't going to grovel over a misunderstanding. The next day, one of the hygienists showed me something on her phone during our break. Have you seen this? She whispered. It was a post from the local community page, drama at the Vaughan's BBQ. Guess some marriages aren't as perfect as they look. Underneath were comments, dozens of them. Some were mocking, some defensive, but they all had one thing in common. Everyone had already chosen sides, and they weren't choosing mine. That afternoon, I decided to take back the story. I posted a photo of myself smiling in the backyard, the same spot where it had happened, with a caption, "People love to gossip when they're jealous of your confidence." Within an hour, it had over 100 likes. The validation soothed me, for a while. Then Ethan's sister commented, "Confidence isn't the same as respect." I deleted her comment instantly, but I couldn't delete the sinking feeling that came with it. 2 days later, a letter arrived in the mail. Plain white envelope, my name typed neatly on the front. I opened it without thinking, and froze. It wasn't a letter, it was a formal notice. Ethan had filed for a consultation on joint custody. The paper listed a date and the name of his lawyer, Claire Vaughan. My hand started shaking. I reread it 3 times, hoping I was misinterpreting it. But no, it was real. I called him immediately, my voice already tight. "Are you serious? You got your sister involved?" He sounded calm, too calm. "I told you I was protecting myself." "From what? From your wife?" "From someone who doesn't respect me," he said, "and from someone who thinks humiliation is a game." I laughed, but it came out wrong. Too high, too defensive. "You're making yourself look ridiculous, Ethan. Everyone already thinks you're overreacting." "I don't care what they think," he said. "I care what's right." I wanted to argue, but he hung up before I could. That night, I sat in bed scrolling through my phone, reading the same text exchange over and over, trying to convince myself he'd cool off. I even typed out a new message. "Can we just talk like adults? You're scaring the kids," but I deleted it before sending. The kids. God. Harper had started asking questions. She came into the bedroom while I was staring at my phone and said, "Why isn't Daddy home yet?" I smiled tightly. "Daddy's just staying at Aunt Claire's for a little while." "Did he get mad?" she asked. I hesitated. "He just needs a break. Sometimes adults need space, you know." She frowned. "Is it because of the barbecue?" I blinked. "What do you mean?" "Liam said Daddy left because you kissed Mr. Noah." My mouth went dry. "Liam doesn't know what he's talking about," I said quickly. "It was just a joke." But Daddy didn't laugh. I didn't have an answer for that. Later that night, after the kids were asleep, I sat on the couch scrolling through Facebook again. Someone had posted a picture of Noah at a local bar with a group of friends. I stared at it longer than I should have. He looked completely fine. Not embarrassed, not affected, just fine. And that made me angry. I typed out a message. "Thanks for disappearing after everything blew up. Real classy." He replied 5 minutes later, "Mirela, it's better if we don't talk. Ethan's serious about the divorce. I don't want to make things worse. Worse. Like it was his problem now. I threw my phone onto the couch and paced the room. Everyone was abandoning me. Ethan, his sister, my friends, even Noah. The next morning, I walked into work and found Jasmine whispering with one of the other girls. They stopped when I walked in. I didn't say anything, just sat down at my desk. A few minutes later, I overheard one of them say softly, "I heard he's going for full custody." My stomach dropped. Full custody? No. Ethan wouldn't do that. He couldn't. He adored the kids, yes, but he couldn't just take them from me. I left work early and drove straight to Claire's office. I didn't care how it looked. She worked in a small building downtown, glass doors, nameplate on the wall. Claire Vaughan, family law. I pushed the door open and walked straight in. Her receptionist looked startled. "Do you have an appointment?" "I'm his wife," I said. "He's making a mistake and I need to fix it." Claire appeared from her office doorway, calm as ever. "Mirela, this isn't the time." "Then when is the time?" I snapped. "He's filing custody paperwork. Over what? A kiss? You know this isn't fair." She looked at me evenly. "Ethan's not trying to hurt you. He's protecting himself and the kids." "From what?" "From instability," she said quietly. "You've made the last few days a public spectacle." I felt my throat tighten. "You think I wanted this? You think I like being the villain?" Claire sighed. "I think you've spent a long time confusing attention with love." I froze. "You don't know anything about me." "I know my brother," she said, "and I know he's done being your punchline." I wanted to scream at her, to tell her she had no right to judge me, but before I could, her phone rang. She excused herself to answer it. I stood there, trembling, listening as she said, "Yes, Ethan, I spoke to her. She understands." Understand? No, I didn't. When I walked out, the sky had turned grey, the air thick and heavy. I sat in my car, staring at the paper in my lap, the official notice, Ethan's signature printed neatly at the bottom. For the first time, I realized this wasn't a fight I could charm my way out of. He wasn't angry anymore. He was certain, and that terrified me more than anything. I didn't sleep for more than an hour that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Ethan's face at the barbecue, calm, steady, but completely unreadable. I kept replaying it over and over, thinking if I could just go back, I'd laugh a little less, drink a little less, maybe not lean in when Noah joked. But what good would that do now? Ethan wasn't the kind of man who forgave once he'd made up his mind. He was patient, but once that patience ran out, he moved like stone, slow but unstoppable. The next morning, I tried to focus on getting the kids ready for school, pretending everything was normal. Harper asked if Daddy would be there for her class play next week. I told her of course he would, even though I wasn't sure anymore. Liam wouldn't stop asking if Ethan was mad. I kept saying no, Daddy was just busy. But every lie felt heavier. When I dropped them off, I saw two other moms standing near the gate whispering. One of them gave me that polite smile people use when they're talking about you and don't want you to notice. My face burned. I almost said something, almost told them to mind their own business, but I didn't. Instead, I drove straight home and poured myself another cup of coffee that I didn't really want. By noon, I couldn't take the waiting anymore. I called Ethan again. He didn't answer. I sent him a message. "Can we please talk like adults? This doesn't have to go to court. We can fix this." This time, he replied, "All communication goes through my lawyer from now on. Please respect that." My chest tightened. "Your lawyer is your sister, Ethan. This is ridiculous." He didn't respond. I threw the phone onto the couch and screamed into my hands. He was cutting me off completely, and somehow he still looked like the calm, reasonable one. I knew I needed to do something to take control back. That's when I decided to go to Claire's office again, whether she liked it or not. She wasn't just my sister-in-law, she was my family, and she needed to hear my side of the story. I wasn't going to sit around and let Ethan twist everything. When I arrived, the receptionist looked nervous the moment I walked in. Mrs. Vaughan, she said carefully, Claire's in a meeting. She can take 5 minutes, I said, smiling tightly. It's family business. Claire came out after a moment, holding a file. Mirela, she said, voice steady, this isn't appropriate. I don't care, I said. You can't keep me locked out of my own marriage. She sighed and gestured to her office. Fine, 5 minutes. I sat down across from her, trying to look composed. He's being dramatic, I started. I've apologized, I've tried to reach out, and now he's turning this into some kind of legal game. Claire didn't blink. He's not being dramatic. He's protecting himself and the kids. You embarrassed him in front of everyone he knows. You made him a joke, and then you mocked him when he didn't fight back. It wasn't like that, I said, my voice rising. It was a joke. Everyone jokes. You've never made a mistake before. This wasn't a mistake, she said quietly. It was a choice. I stared at her, stunned. So what? You're just going to help him ruin me? I'm helping him move on, she replied. And if you're smart, you'll do the same. Dragging this out will only make it worse. Her calmness made me want to scream. You think you know what's best for my marriage? I think I know when a marriage is over, she said. That was it. I stood up, trembling, and said, You're enjoying this. You've never liked me. You're finally getting what you wanted. She didn't even argue. She just said, Goodbye, Mirela. I left before she could see the tears starting to form. I hated her for being so composed, for treating me like a lost cause. But mostly, I hated that she was right. That evening, my mum came over. She looked tired, older somehow. You have to stop making things worse, she said as soon as she sat down. I'm not making anything worse, I said. He's freezing me out. He won't even speak to me. Then let him cool off, she said gently. He'll either come back or he won't. But chasing him with lawyers involved, it's not helping. I shook my head. You don't get it. He's collecting things, Mom. Evidence. He's trying to make me look unfit. She frowned. Evidence of what? I don't know, I said, pacing. Texts, screenshots, whatever he can twist. Claire's probably helping him build a case. She sighed. Then maybe stop giving him ammunition. I glared at her. So now you're taking his side too? I'm taking your children's side, she said softly. And right now you're making their lives harder. Her words hit me like a slap. I wanted to yell, to tell her she didn't understand, but instead I just sat there, biting my lip. She left not long after, saying she'd check on the kids the next day. After she left, I sat in silence for a long time, scrolling through old photos on my phone. Pictures of Ethan smiling, holding Harper when she was a baby, kissing me on the forehead while I laughed. We used to be happy. How had everything fallen apart so fast? Then, around 9 that night, an email came through. It was from Claire's office. My heart started pounding before I even opened it. It was a formal notice of filing. Ethan was officially requesting temporary custody of the kids and initiating divorce proceedings. Attached were documents, neatly labeled evidence, photos from the barbecue, screenshots of my texts mocking him, comments from the neighborhood chat, bank records showing my online purchases, probably meant to paint me as irresponsible. Even a note from Harper's teacher saying she'd been distracted and sad in class lately. I stared at the screen, my hands shaking. He'd been planning this. While I'd been trying to argue and explain, he'd been collecting proof. Calmly, quietly, the whole time. I called him immediately, not caring that it was late. He answered on the second ring. You filed? I said, voice trembling. Yes, he said simply. How could you do this? You made it easy, he said. I gave you chances to be honest. You turned everyone into a performance. You're punishing me for one mistake. I'm ending a pattern, he said. I swallowed hard. You're going to regret this. There was a pause, then he said, I already regret staying this long. He hung up. I sat there staring at the wall, the silence ringing in my ears. For the first time, I didn't feel angry. I felt small, like the world had finally shifted out from under me, and I couldn't find my balance. The next day, the papers arrived at the house, thick envelopes full of forms and legal words that didn't even feel real. I didn't sign anything right away. I just left them on the table and stared at them. When Harper and Liam came home, I forced a smile and told them Daddy was working on something important. Harper looked at me for a long time and said quietly, "You shouldn't have kissed Mr. Noah." Then she went upstairs. Her words broke something in me, not because she was wrong, but because she was right, and I couldn't argue anymore. That night, I sat in the dark living room with the papers spread out in front of me. Ethan's calm signature at the bottom of every page looked like the end of a story I hadn't realized I'd finished writing. For once, I didn't have anything to say. The court date came faster than I expected. 1 week turned into 2, and suddenly, I was standing outside the courthouse in a wrinkled blazer that didn't fit right, holding a folder of papers I barely understood. I hadn't even hired a proper lawyer, just some man I found online who offered a free consultation and told me to stay calm and cooperative. Easy for him to say. Ethan was already there when I arrived. He stood near the entrance with Claire, dressed in a plain grey suit. He looked different, colder, but also lighter somehow, like he'd dropped a weight I didn't realize he was carrying. He nodded politely when he saw me, the same way he might nod at a stranger. That small gesture hurt more than any shouting match could have. Inside, everything smelled like paper and disinfectant. The waiting room was quiet except for the sound of footsteps echoing down the hallway. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. My lawyer tried to make small talk, asking if I'd reviewed the documents. I told him I had, though the truth was I'd read them a dozen times and still couldn't wrap my head around the fact that this was real. When our names were called, my stomach dropped. The courtroom wasn't as dramatic as I'd imagined, just a few wooden benches, a judge, and the dull hum of the ceiling fan. Ethan sat across from me, hands folded neatly on the table. He didn't look angry. He didn't look hurt. He just looked finished. The judge started by summarizing the case: marital breakdown, incident of public humiliation, request for temporary custody, asset separation. Hearing it out loud made it sound so much worse than I'd ever let myself believe. Public humiliation. The words echoed in my head. They made it sound deliberate, cruel. Maybe it was. When it was my turn to speak, my lawyer nudged me gently. I stood up, smoothing my skirt, and tried to sound calm. "Your Honor," I began, "I made a mistake, but it was never meant to hurt anyone. It was a party, there was drinking, and I thought we were all joking around. Ethan overreacted. He's always been sensitive about how people see him, and—" Ethan's lawyer interrupted. "Objection, relevance." The judge nodded. "Stick to your perspective, Mrs. Vaughan. Avoid personal attacks." I swallowed hard. "I just want to say that I love my husband, and I don't think one misunderstanding should destroy our family. He's acting out of embarrassment, not logic." When I sat down, my lawyer gave me a stiff nod, the kind that meant that could have gone better. Then Ethan spoke. His voice was calm and even, the same tone he used when explaining something mechanical. "I'm not asking to punish anyone," he said. "I just want stability for our children. They've seen things they shouldn't have. I don't want to keep living in an environment where I'm treated like a joke." He handed over a file. Claire had organized everything: timestamps, screenshots, statements from neighbors, even comments from the school counselor saying Harper had been anxious since the barbecue. Every page felt like a knife twisting a little deeper. When the judge looked at me again, her face wasn't unkind, but it was firm. "Mrs. Vaughan, your husband has provided extensive documentation. Do you dispute the events listed here?" I opened my mouth, then closed it. What could I say? That everyone had misunderstood me? That it wasn't supposed to mean anything? It all sounded childish now. "No," I said finally, my voice small. The hearing didn't last long after that. The judge spoke about temporary custody arrangements and financial stability and mutual respect in communication. The words blurred together. When she announced that Ethan would have primary custody for now, with visitation rights to be reviewed later, I felt like I'd been punched in the chest. I wanted to scream, to argue, to make her see that this wasn't fair. But I didn't. Ethan's lawyer slid the papers toward me to sign, and I just stared at them. My hand shook as I wrote my name. Each stroke of the pen felt like closing a door I'd never be able to open again. Afterward, Ethan approached me in the hallway. For a second, I thought maybe he'd say something. Anything. An apology, a memory, even anger. But he just said, "I'll make sure the kids call you tonight." That was it. No emotion, no bitterness, just finality. "I didn't mean for it to end like this," I whispered. He nodded once. Neither did I. And then he walked away, Claire beside him, calm as always. I watched them go until the sound of their footsteps faded. I sat in my car for almost an hour afterward, staring at the courthouse doors. People came and went, laughing, arguing, hugging, but I stayed frozen. Everything felt unreal. Like this wasn't happening to me, but to some other woman who'd made one stupid mistake and lost everything. When I finally drove home, the house looked smaller somehow. Quiet. The kids' drawing still hung on the fridge. The couch still had the dent from where Ethan used to sit, but the air felt different, emptier. I walked through each room, touching things like they might explain what had gone wrong. The photos on the wall, the coffee mugs, the stack of unopened mail. Everything was still here, except him. The envelope from the court sat on the kitchen table. I opened it again, even though I already knew what it said. The words looked colder in print. Temporary custody, granted to Ethan Vaughn. Marital assets, frozen pending mediation. I poured myself a glass of water and sat down, staring at the signature at the bottom, mine, right beside his. Two names that used to mean us, now divided by legal ink. The kids came home that weekend for their first visit. Ethan brought them to the door, polite and distant. Harper hugged me quickly. Liam was quieter, clutching his backpack. Ethan stayed outside, hands in his pockets. "Their bedtime's the same," he said. "I'll pick them up Sunday at 3. I nodded. "Okay." He hesitated, then added, "You'll get the schedule in writing from my lawyer." That word again, lawyer. Everything was official now. When he left, Harper looked at me and asked, "Are you and Daddy still married?" I smiled weakly. "We're still a family," I said. It wasn't exactly a lie, but it wasn't true either. That night, after they went to bed, I sat on the couch and tried to watch TV. But my mind kept replaying the last few months, the party, the laughter, the moment I kissed Noah, the way Ethan's face changed. I kept thinking about how I'd told everyone he was overreacting, how I'd convinced myself I was the victim. But sitting there in the silence, surrounded by everything I'd lost, I couldn't keep lying to myself anymore. He hadn't ruined me. I'd done that all on my own. The next morning, a courier came by with another envelope. Final copies of the divorce filing for me to sign and return. I stared at them for a long time. The instructions were clear, clinical. Sign and date each page. Return to sender within 7 business days. I didn't cry when I signed them. There weren't any tears left. I just placed my pen on the line and wrote my name, each letter slower than the last. When I finished, I stacked the papers neatly, slid them back into the envelope, and sealed it shut. The sound of the seal pressing down was louder than it should have been. When the courier drove away, I sat by the window watching the street, half expecting Ethan to appear one last time. He didn't. The sun was bright, kids were playing a few houses down, and life was still moving, just not mine. For a long time, I stayed there, whispering to myself, he didn't even fight for me, but deep down, I knew he had. Just not in the way I expected. He'd fought by walking away, by keeping his dignity when I tried to take it, by choosing peace over chaos, and that somehow hurt the most.